Thanks for taking the time to join me here. I'm JD Stillwater, Science Ambassador and lay worship leader in UU spaces all over North America. I'm a tall, skinny, old cis white guy with a shaved head and a small gray goatee that used to be reddish blonde and that at least one person thinks is kind of cute. I'm recording this here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, land of the Conestoga Susquehannock people, who the history books say were all completely exterminated in 1763, but whose descendants I met with just a few months ago. And they continue to press for tribal recognition. And they have historical documents proving their direct lineage since before 1763. Over the last few years, I've led about 200 Sunday services, workshops, and adult RE sessions in over 50 different UU congregations, mostly sharing how science can enrich and inform spirituality and cultural awakening. And what I do is more immersive than your typical sermon. So I thought it might be helpful to share my secrets with other congregational leaders like you. In my 25 years teaching science, I learned that most people don't learn well just from hearing someone else talk. The more different senses the information comes in through, the better it can be retained. And as we know, there is a marvelous diversity in how human brains work. Some people do fine with just hearing words. Some need to see a picture. Some have to move their bodies as they learn. And some people do best with written words, and so on. But multiple channels available simultaneously benefits everyone because they can attend to the mode or modes that work best for them. Now, a worship service and a science lesson are two different things, but at their best, both are deeply meaningful. And so both are better when they also engage the emotions in some way. And using multimedia in worship is a great way to accomplish all of this. It's the difference between a lecture and a movie. To demonstrate what's possible, I want to share with you a short clip from a sermon I gave earlier this spring at the UU Church in Lancaster, PA.
It's spring, right? Perfect time to celebrate newness, resurrection, flowers, eggs, hope, and gratitude. We made it through the winter. Whenever spring comes, I often experience it as kind of a big sigh of relief. Some of the layers of heavy clothing come off and I can move a little more freely. Snow and ice finally give way to spiky green rockets shooting up out of the soil, which then begins a countdown to riotous color, followed by hyacinth ecstasy drifting on the wind like free hallucinogens, but much better. Little peeps begin to fill the no, not those peeps. Little peeps begin to fill the social media feeds of those who are lucky enough to have chickens.
My purpose in this session is not to provide a step-by-step how-to in order to do multimedia. That would take many hours, and it would kind of undermine the originality and artistry that you would bring to your multimedia creations. I want you to leave this session with an understanding of the power of multimedia for making worship more engaging, some basics regarding software and where to find images, videos, and sounds without violating copyrights, with the sense that creating multimedia is within your capability, with some tricks that I use that may be helpful to you, and with a willingness to give it a try, using the diverse strengths of your congregation's village. Now, this is a good time to remind you of all the times you've been bored out of your gourd by something I call death by PowerPoint. This slide with its canned background, text that's too small to see from the back of a sanctuary, a cluttered feel, bullet points that I recited redundantly, and no motion on the slide. This is not what I mean by multimedia. An hour of this and you never make it to the end. So let's try that again. I want you to leave this session with an understanding of the power of multimedia for worship. with some basics regarding software and where to find images, videos, and sounds without violating copyrights, with the sense that creating multimedia is within your capability, with some tricks that I use that may be helpful to you, and a willingness to give it a try using the diverse strengths of your congregation's village. I didn't know this until recently, but I've been instinctively following what people call the 5-5-5 rule. No more than 5 words per line, no more than 5 lines per slide, and no more than 5 text-based slides in a row. Less text is usually more if you want to avoid death by PowerPoint. Now, before we really dive in, another word about learning styles and inclusion, not from me, but from a chaplaincy student. And she made this comment unsolicited after my lesson for chaplaincy students about science as a bridge between faiths.
I'm a visual person, so I love all your visuals and the sounds and everything that you incorporate into the teaching. It's very helpful for someone like me.
I hear comments like that fairly often, but this was the first time I got a recording of someone saying it, and I used it here with Nicole's permission. I think there are many reasons that our UU religious movement is still fairly small, but one reason may be that our services are still geared toward people who enjoyed school because they enjoyed the lecture format. You know, smart person talks, we sit and listen and learn. Teachers call this format sage on a stage. It's very intellectual. It's not very emotional. It's not very inclusive of other learning styles, not very immersive or embodied. And until recently, worship leaders didn't have much choice. Multimedia was hard, if not impossible, especially for small congregations with limited budgets. But technology has made it much more accessible to average people. And then the COVID pandemic forced faith communities to upgrade their tech radically. So the barriers to trying multimedia they've been all but eliminated. However, I'm not going to lie to you. This takes time, a lot of time. It takes me about 50 hours of work to craft a single 20-minute sermon with multimedia. I can't crank one out every week. No one could. So start with adding an image to a short reading or a chalice lighting and expand from there. All right, let's get started with some software. There are 4 common packages that people use for slide presentations: Google Slides, Microsoft PowerPoint, Apple's Keynote, and for those who prefer open source software, OpenOffice Impress. But we're interested in multimedia, not just slides. I'm no big fan of Microsoft, but PowerPoint is the most versatile of the 4 for going beyond slides and into multimedia. Google Slides is great for collaborating with other people, but it doesn't handle images or videos very easily. It's not very user-friendly when you're working with images and videos. Keynote is easy to use, but it lacks some features that I think are essential, and it's not on very many computers. I haven't used Impress. I'm not even sure if it's Impress or Impress. It's free and it's open source, which is great. I imagine that it has features similar to PowerPoint, but there's a lot less help available online if you get stuck. So if you have Microsoft Office, I recommend that you use PowerPoint. Some principles for creating your slides. Images should augment the message. If I'm talking about nature's awe as the basis for a rich spirituality, then this image is much better than this one, right? Let your images be the 1,000 words that allow you to pack more emotional and informational impact into the same talking time. Use emotion. If we're talking about war or poverty, let the visual and emotional impact of it be present. We're not going for shock value here. Graphic gore does not belong in worship, but empathy does, and images can help us feel it. And not just negative emotions. You can also let humor happen on the slide while you just kind of keep going. Generally, you want to avoid redundancy between your slides and your spoken words, except maybe as a way to emphasize something. So in my sermon on the science of oneness, I share some science about how closely related we are to every living thing on Earth, genetically. And then I say, researcher Dr. Daniel Wildcat says we live among relatives, not resources. We live among relatives, not resources. It's a powerful moment. It's with triple redundancy. And I often hear a few soft gasps among the members when I say this. Represent diversity. You may have to work at it. When you search for images of babies, I hope you'll get results like this. But Google has probably learned what I'm looking for. So it wouldn't surprise me if your searches bring different results than this. Be intentional about it. Seek out imagery that represents human diversity, ethnic as well as diverse body shapes, diverse abilities, and of course, diverse genders. Use clear images. An image like this is a distraction. I like to use emojis to add lightness, but when you make them big, they do this, which is also kind of distracting. See how pixelated that is? Keep things moving. I often speak in retirement communities where it is guaranteed that someone will nod off during a 45-minute talk. And when that happens during worship, it can be pretty discouraging to the worship leader. Images can help, especially if they change frequently, unpredictably, and if they offer rewards for staying engaged and attentive. Through lines. I like to maintain visible through lines to make it more like a movie and less like a slideshow. And also because it helps your audience follow the outline that's in your head, but maybe hard to follow with spoken words alone. You can do it with a consistent section title or by keeping some elements on the slide to go from slide to slide, to connect each slide to the next one. And if you need to move your through line element, let them see it move rather than snapping to a new place unpredictably. Videos are more engaging than photos, are more engaging than clip art. All are better with sound. You're not always going to find what you need in video, but that was a lot of the seagulls. You won't always find what you need in video, but you can turn a photo into a video using animations. Animations are useful not only for engagement, but also for emotionality. So here's an example from my Defiant Love service about intergenerational trauma. The children are literally looking toward and receding into a future that's beyond us as we consider how our choices will impact them. So slow movies, slow animations for to boost emotionality. So again, slow ones for the profound and emotional, use fast and jerky ones for humor and for emphasis. Avoid clutter. Every element on your slide should add something to the main point, and only if the overall look is clean. So a slide like this is cluttered. Cluttered can be okay if you build it slowly. So I actually use a slide pretty similar to this one after covering each of these natural cycles briefly. So by the time we get to this summary, the audience is already familiar with these words and images. And the clutteredness actually helps make my point about their complex interconnectivity. And then I do this for humor. Use color. Use it for consistency, as a through line, for engagement, to help the audience keep track of the flow. There are lots of uses for color. Keep in mind that some people can't distinguish red and green. So superimposing reds and greens like this will leave them confused. And it's easy to avoid. You don't have to do this. I sometimes need reminders about this myself. Two rules about text. A wall of text like this is no good. It's going to alienate the people in the back of your sanctuary, as well as any front row folks whose glasses are dirty. So wherever possible, you want to use the least amount of text possible. Tighten, tighten, tighten your prose. Actually, that's a good rule for all writing, but it's especially true on a slide. Minimizing the text allows you to follow my second rule, which is use big fonts. If it's a really good quote and you really want them to read it, print it in the order of service. You see how much nicer this is than the slide as it started out? One more hint about text. Make it stand out against the background using glow or text outline. There are several ways to do that in PowerPoint. Okay, so where do I get these images? There are lots of great images and videos that you can legally and ethically use without paying money. They fall into two main categories: Creative Commons and public domain. Creative Commons works are free to use, but you have to credit the creator like this. Public domain works are released for anyone to use with no strings attached. Anything created by the US government is automatically in the public domain because you already paid for it through your taxes. Many amateur photographers are happy to release their photos for free public use. And in a minute, I'll show you some entire websites that are devoted just to that. All right, where to find them? There are 7 main sources and one not great one. The not so great one is PowerPoint itself. The Office suite comes with a library of clip art, a few textures, and a few generic stock images. Microsoft already paid the royalties so that you can use those images freely. But there aren't many, and they tend to get overused by people who are using PowerPoint. If you have a subscription to Office 365, there are a lot more you can use, but I don't pay for that. Maybe there's some good stuff in that library. I don't really know. But I know you can use anything in that Office library in your work without restrictions. I know that you will also be tempted to just Google stuff. That can work, but most of the results are going to be copyrighted. You can narrow those search results to Creative Commons and public domain images combined using this hard to notice tools menu. When you click on that and choose usage rights, all the best images are going to disappear because they're copyrighted. A much better source, and my first go-to, is commons.wikimedia.org. It's a library of over 140 million media files that are all Creative Commons or public domain. So let's say we want an image for coffee hour. I type coffee in the search bar and just look at all the results. However, most of these are Creative Commons, like this one. I'd prefer not to have this to distract my audience if I can avoid it, but it's legally required for this image because it's a Creative Commons image. So I'm going to click this inconspicuous license tool and choose no restrictions, which means public domain. You see, there are still lots of choices, fewer, but still plenty. So let's pick this lovely image. I click on it, and that opens a sidebar where we can see some information: the author, the license, the file name, stuff like that. The size of the photo in pixels. Generally, bigger is better because it won't end up being pixelated when you make it fill your slide. So if you're sure this is what you want, right-click the larger text at the top and then choose Download Linked File As, and then save it somewhere. I like to keep a folder of all the images I've ever downloaded, and I include the license type in the file name so that a year from now, I'll know what's required of me regarding copyright for that image or video. In this case, I'd name it Spilling Coffee Beans PD, where PD means public domain. I think it looks pretty nice, again, with no attribution needed on your slide. If the only image that works for what you're looking for is under a Creative Commons license, I would save it. I do that. I save it with a file name that tells me that when I want to reuse it in 2029 or something. But honestly, I'd rather have a video. So I'm going to click here to see the search results for videos. Now, Wikimedia stores videos in two formats, OggVorbis and WebM, neither of which can go into PowerPoint directly. You have to convert them using VLC, which is a free video conversion program. Have I mentioned that this work takes time? But for public domain videos, there are easier sources. Wikimedia has great explanatory and educational media, but they are primarily an encyclopedia. So they aren't going to have videos or videos like this one. Beautiful, right? But not necessarily aimed at a Wikipedia page. So for videos like this, I use pexels.com. Pexels has photos and videos that are uploaded into the public domain, along with a gentle invitation to send the generous people who shot the images a thank you note or a monetary donation. You don't have to do either of those things, but it's easy if you choose to do it. Pexels makes money by including ads for more costly media in their search results, like iStock, and also with ads for Canva, which is an AI-based image manipulation platform. I believe Canva is free, but I don't use it. I've heard that it's fun and useful and uses a god-awful amount of power and water. I avoid using AI on principle, but your mileage may vary. Actually, I welcome your thoughts about Canva and AI generally in the comments on this video. Pexels is a great resource if I can't find something on Wikimedia, especially for videos. There's that invitation to tip or thank the photographer, plus an even bigger ad for Canva. Remember though, to fill your slide, you need videos in landscape mode. Most people today shoot cell phone pictures and videos in portrait mode, vertically, which really annoys me. What are they thinking? Life mostly happens sideways, not vertically. We don't fly, we humans. Sides are where we get the context of what's happening. Oh, well. If needed, you can quickly and easily crop a vertical video in PowerPoint, but you'll only get part of it. So keep that in mind. You could also put 2 or 3 vertical videos side by side on your slide, but that's really disorienting for your audience, unless they've already seen these videos and you're just reminding them of something. There's another website, unsplash.com, and it's pretty much the same as Pexels. Images released into the public domain with an optional invitation to thank and tip the creator of them. No videos on Unsplash, but Unsplash also has artwork and illustrations, and you can filter out the vertical ones, which is helpful. Pixabay.com is a similar site, except they also have, in addition to photos, they have illustrations, drawings, videos, music, sound effects, 3D models, and GIFs. I haven't used Pixabay much. Honestly, I just found out about them recently while searching for sound effects. They also have helpful filters. So Pixabay may become my new go-to after Wikimedia Commons. There is one last source of truly stellar material, and that is your own camera or cell phone. Most newer phones record in high definition pictures and videos. So your phone photos should be great to use on your slides. I happen to have a thing for slow motion videos of waterfalls. I can't resist it whenever I'm near one. So I have more waterfall videos, especially in slow-mo, than I will ever use. And you only need a few seconds of it most of the time. As I hope you've experienced already, immersive multimedia can add a lot to your worship, not just for sermons, although that's mostly how I use it. Not every sanctuary is fully tech ready, though. I've worked with about 50 UU congregations so far, plus another 100 or so interfaith, civic, and academic communities, both in person and remote. And they all have a wide variety of capacities regarding technology. And I found that the more multimedia I add, like sounds, the more complicated it gets. And some congregations just they're not set up to handle more than just a sermon if they have any multimedia capacity at all. But you will most likely be doing it in a single church community, so you'll know exactly what your tech team can manage. If you already use a slide deck for the elements, the worship elements, and for hymn lyrics, play around with adding multimedia to readings and chalice lightings. Put images or videos behind the hymn lyrics and so on. Have fun with it and be prepared to get constructive feedback from your congregation as you try things. I borrowed these blue slides from my home church, the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. And when I asked permission to use them, the resulting conversation with Director of Music Ministries, Yvonne Duval, revealed a few secrets that I didn't know. First, during a PowerPoint presentation, you can type a slide number and then hit return, and it will jump straight to that slide. So Yvonne uses that to separate the looped set of announcement slides in the beginning from the service element slides that are in the same file. And then the volunteer tech person who advances the slides can jump back to the announcement slides at the end of the service or ahead to any slide at any time just by typing the slide number they want to go to. Very cool. And I didn't know that. She also told me that she's starting to fade title slides into subtle videos during long service elements, kind of like this, so that there isn't text just sitting there on the screen for so long. This is brilliant. And then she reminded me about the resources at Sing Out Love. Oh my. If you're not yet using Sing Out Love, the awesome new virtual hymnal from the UUA, it's time to get a subscription for your congregation. The website is singoutlove.org. And when you click on one of the several hundred new hymns, you'll see some information about the composer, the lyrics, and a PDF of the sheet music, all of which you can download and use. If you scroll down a bit, you'll discover that if you needed the music to be in a different key, you can download the same sheet music transposed. Then in the center, there are all kinds of downloadable files of the song in different composition software formats. All of this is great for your musicians, but what we're looking for is a little further down. Here it is. Hit this first link and you get a PowerPoint file with all the lyric slides for that hymn ready to go, all on separate slides. You just copy and paste them into your PowerPoint file. If you hit that second link, you get an entire folder of images, easy to insert into your slides, some with a white background and some with a black background. And those look like this and like this, respectively, when you just drop them into your PowerPoint file. I have only just begun to embed audio into my slides, partly because some congregations just can't handle it. Thunder, when I'm talking about lightning, I'll include migrating geese with a video of them, and so on. PowerPoint handles the audio clips pretty well, so I'm playing around with it. With so many slide changes, you might be wondering how I know when to click to the next slide or animation. Well, here's the script I'm working from right now. Each big red dot, which is one of the standard emojis in the emojis on your computer, tells me to click for a new slide. The yellow dot runs an animation on the same slide, like those red ovals. So I just click when I come to each dot. You could use any kind of mark, but after 300 talks, I'm used to these ones. For making changes later, the two different colored dots help me to find which slide goes with what text. And here in the slide sorter, a star next to a slide's thumbnail tells me there's at least one animation on that slide. And with over 140 slides in this presentation, it would get really confusing if I only used one color of dot. It's confusing anyway, but the dots help a lot. If clicking while speaking feels overwhelming, you can also print the whole script in color or move it to a tablet and just ask someone on your tech team to click for you. My live concert collaboration with Peter Mayer includes nearly 500 slides with a similar number of animations. It's so fast and so complex that my spouse Anne advances the slides for me while I speak and while Peter plays his music. Another pro tip, make your own script font big too. Leading worship takes your full attention, even without remembering to advance any slides. So you can't afford to be squinting at your screen or your paper. I use two laptops, one to run the multimedia and an older, cheaper one for my script. Back when I used paper, I would only print on the top half of the page. And that was a tip from a fellow worship associate. That keeps the text closer to my sight line with the audience, so I'm not always looking so far down as I read. If you have a long spoken section that you just can't think of good images for, like this one, you can let a video run. All of this takes time. Don't expect to have gorgeous, immersive, engaging multimedia for next Sunday's service unless you have the entire week to work on it, even if you're already a pro with the software. If you're not already familiar, learning new software can feel pretty daunting. So if you're familiar with Word and Excel, you may be able to learn PowerPoint fairly quickly. When I want to learn new software, I usually start by just trying things, exploring everything in the menus and toolbars with the question, what does this do in my mind? What does that do? And when confused, I do a quick web search to find out. And there are dozens, hundreds of helpful videos and websites to answer any kind of question you might have about how to do something or where to find what you need, especially if you're using PowerPoint. If you haven't heard this yet, you can avoid using Google's AI by typing -AI in the search bar when you search. PowerPoint has a ton of bells and whistles, which makes it both really useful and a bit overwhelming. Did I mention that this art form takes a lot of time? It's fun though, for me at least. Options. It's helpful to know what's possible. So I do want to spend just a few minutes on that. Every item on your slide, every element, whether it's the background, any shapes you use, drawings, text, everything is filled with something and then has an outline. Fills can be a single color, they can be a gradient, a texture, it can be transparent or empty, it can be an image or even a video. There are lots of options for lines too, including no line at all. Compare this slide from my sermon about spring and emergence, where I'm talking about rotten eggs that didn't hatch. Compare this slide to this one. Gradients behind an object can make a big difference in the feeling of it. And PowerPoint allows complex gradients with lots of different colors. I would have preferred to make the emojis bigger on this slide, but they're already a bit pixelated at this size. So I let the background gradient augment the disgusted feeling that I'm trying to communicate. If you group different items into a single object, you can fill the combined object as though it were one object, which I think is really cool. Animations let you pre-program changes to items with a fair number of options for their entrance, their exit, movement around the slide, sizing, and for emphasis. You can change the timing, sequence, speed, and repetition of your animations. You can crop your photos and videos to one of the preset shapes. For example, I recently spoke about menstruation and the moon, and I wanted to integrate them by overlapping the moon phases just to the left of the mother's forehead. But the moon image had this big black rectangle around it. So cropping the moon to a circle shape and then adding a little bit of transparency did the trick. This reminds me, every item on your slide is on its own layer, like pieces of glass stacked up. That means some items can end up behind others, whether you like it or not. Sometimes that's a good thing. But on this slide, my titles got buried by some of the images I added. Well, one of the most powerful tools PowerPoint introduced in the last few years lets you see the layers from an angle like this, and then reshuffle them by dragging them into a different order. Obviously, I'm barely scratching the surface of what's possible, and you've been here with me for a while already. Using multimedia in worship makes the experience more immersive, more emotional, and more inclusive of diverse learning styles. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that it is guaranteed to exclude people with serious visual impairments. There is not yet a technology for the visually impaired that's comparable to those headsets that help your hearing impaired members hear. So as multimedia increases inclusivity for neurodivergent members and is more immersive and engaging for most members, we could unwittingly make our services less inclusive for the visually impaired. And that's not something to be dismissive about if we actually care about our members and guests. And to my knowledge, it's only happened once in my years doing this work, but when it did, it shook me up. I came to the end of a pretty well-attended interfaith event in Texas and only then learned that there was a blind person there that evening. And I scolded myself for never considering how visually impaired people might experience my work. So afterward, I went and apologized to her. But she said she actually didn't need the visuals to get good meaning and insight from what I had said. And that was a relief. So this is another caution. Make sure that the words you speak can stand on their own. Let the multimedia add something valuable, but not essential. Let your members and visitors with visual impairments hear an inspiring and meaningful worship service, with or without multimedia. And let me acknowledge that I have not followed that caution with this video that you're watching now, or with the videos that accompany it. Thankfully, this is not intended to be worship, but it is intended to encourage you to engage in a highly visual art form. So, with apologies to anyone that's visually impaired here now, I hope you'll forgive me. I want to leave you with some beauty and wonder as you try to digest all of this. It's one of my favorite videos of an evening primrose flower. And this is not time lapse. I filmed this in real time with my iPhone in our yard. Thank you for taking this time with me. I wish you a spirit of playfulness as you explore using multimedia in worship for inspiration and inclusion. I will also present the same information as a webinar in a webinar format on Tuesday, June 16 at 7 p.m. So if you watch this and you have questions, meet me there and add them to the Q&A and we can talk about it. For more on me and my work, please visit jdstillwater.earth. Let's do something inspiring together. All right, bye for now.